Well, good evening. Wednesday night, of course, means it is time for the last tackle. Loads to talk about as ever. I've got Kevin Brown in the studio alongside me. We're going to have a little bit of a route around so we can plot the road to Old Trafford. I think we are officially into what they call the business end of the season, Kev. We're past this split round. It is all roads to Old Trafford from here on in. We will start, though, by just reflecting on the games gone at the weekend. We'll start with Hull KR against Salford. Big win for Hull Kingston Rovers, as we expected, Kev. But they'll be pleased with them. You know, teams have gone to Salford and won, but not looked great. Hull KR went to Salford and won. Looked pretty good.
They looked very good, didn't they? That combination between Mikey Lewis and Joe Burgess looked outstanding. Some of the tries they scored straight off the kick-off. You can't underestimate how hard it is when you're expected to win comfortably to actually do it, but do it in a manner that you're happy with the performance. Salford are still trying. They're not going down without a fight. Mentally, it's very difficult, but what Hull KR did and what Willie Peters has got his team doing time and time again is just consistently turning out good performances. So they look the real deal. I think that shows the league leaders up for them. You know, I can't see them losing 2, even 3 games now, and Wigan win them all. So I think they get that league leaders off the back.
Mikey Lewis, absolutely outstanding as he has been all season. There's a really interesting narrative with this because he's giving Sean Wayne a lot of problems, isn't he? I think we've seen Sean's preference be George Williams as a running halfback, Harry Smith alongside him to organise things. Well, Mikey Smith is an out-and-out runner. Can he find room in that? You've got to find somewhere in that starting lineup for Mikey Lewis, haven't you?
It's so difficult, and Sean Wayne has got a real difficult decision. For me, it's is it George Williams, the England captain, or is it the current man of steel? And he's potentially playing even better this year as well. I think he's developed his game. I think he's developed his kicking game. I think he's developed his passing game. But his running game's got better. So for me, I would still go with George Williams. I think he's tried and tested. Unfortunately for Mikey, I think the fact that the combination of Harry Smith and George Williams works so well. But don't get me wrong, I think the combination of a Harry Smith and Mikey Lewis would be pretty formidable as well. But to drop your England captain, and I think that's where it'd have to be. For me, I don't see them lining up together, Williams and Mikey Lewis. I just think that is a little bit too much X factor. Probably not enough guile and team management, and that's what Harry brings. So it's a great decision to have. I think when we've played Australia before, the Australians always have a couple to pick from, and now we've got that decision to make, which is great.
Hull KR obviously big winners against Salford, as I said, we expect them to be, but you're kind of waiting for them to break down. And I know they've had a few little bumpy results in there, but every time that they lose a game or they put in a performance you wouldn't expect, they seem to come back stronger again.
Yeah, I was expecting some sort of dip after the Challenge Cup final. Obviously, the first time they've won a trophy in a long, long time. Celebrations, emotions. They did have a slight dip from their current standards. They lost a game, but nothing like what we've seen previously to other clubs. So the challenge for them is they could genuinely do the treble this year. And if they do that, then what a party that'll be. I think there's some strong competition coming behind them now. I think a lot of teams have timed the run. Wigan are clearly off at the minute, but they get a number of players back. Lee is sensational at the moment. Leeds are coming strong. And don't write Wakefield off from 6th either. You know, I think they're, under Darryl Powell, just getting better and better all year. So it's by a long way over. I think they do get the league leaders, but that title race is wide open.
We'll move on to that in a second. We'll just talk about a similar theme to the Helens doing a professional job against Cats with that 40-0 win. I think there's 2 really encouraging things from Saints' perspective. One, that having been at the point of crisis earlier on in the season, or very close to it, they've turned things around. And 2, the turnaround has been off the strength of youth players that have come through the academy, and some real bright young things that have it's not. They've had some decent overseas recruitment, but it's been the academy players that have stood out.
And it's been the defence, Lewis. I think if you trace it back to when they played Leeds at home and you saw Harry Smith and Owen Dagnall chasing back and putting Ryan Hall in touch, the fact that they're valuing defence so much and them young players have got so much about them in attack, I think Owen Dagnall and Harry Robertson, they've probably been the best two young breakthrough players this year. You know, Dagnall scoring a great try, chipping over and scoring in the corner, and Harry Robertson going round his centre and going the length. Two unbelievable players. And when Saints have been good previously in Super League, it's been down to the young British players. And Mike Roche, Amy McManus and Paul Wellens, they've seen that formula work time and time again. So that production line is still pretty handy, and they're doing a great job at the moment for the Saints.
On to Lee versus Warrington. I'd say game in a round of 3, but actually probably one of the games of the season. Absolutely brilliant entertainment from minute 1 to 80, and a comeback from Lee that really I thought told a story of they're taking this seriously. They're going to be dangerous at the back end of this year. Yeah,
when you come back in such a manner, it shows you've got trust in the systems. You know, you could forgive them for throwing a few wild passes, and you know, when it was 16-2 or 16-8, whatever it was, not quite getting it right, and the score blowing out a little bit to Warrington, but they didn't go off script. I think Adrian Lamb's drilled that side now, that they're confident, even if there's 4 or 5 minutes to go, they can score a couple of tries. I think when you've got Ipape and Lachlan Lamb in the side, surrounded by other very, very talented players, you've always got a chance. But for me at the moment, Lachlan Lamb is you know, in the form of his life, and the rest of the Lee team are going with him.
We spoke about Mikey Lewis in terms of England selection. I think Owen Trout's going to be quite difficult to keep out of that squad the way that he's been going. It would be a big call, inexperienced, unexposed at that level, but the way he's playing week in, week out puts him right in the mix.
Yeah, and versatile too. He can play in the middle, but he can also play on the edge. What I really like about Trout is he's chaotic, and I mean that in the best way. There's no self-preservation whatsoever. When he's making a tackle, he is going 100 mile an hour. Technique might not always be right, but he is flying in. And as an attacking player, and as an ex-halfback myself, they're the players you hate to play against, because you know they're coming all the time and you don't know what they're going to hit you with. And when you're passing the ball, you're looking out for him. He's going after some big players. I've seen him against Walmsley and some top international players, and he's doing the business against them. Everyone's you know, inexperienced until they get that experience out there. I think if he goes in there, I think the Australians won't know anything about him, and they probably won't know what's hit him when he does play.
From a Warrington perspective, pretty good for large parts of that game. Faded away at the end. Is there a mindset? Is it a lack of confidence? Is it a little bit of second guessing when they get into the back end of these games? Winning this a few times this season now, we've seen them, you know, fall at the last hurdle in games.
For me, there's a bit of all that, but there's a genuine vulnerability to the defence. You know, if you attack Warrington enough on their line, you will score points. That has statistically been proven all season. There's been a change from this year to last year in that regard. Last year they looked so solid. Whatever the reason is, that is the case, and I think, you know, we mentioned Lee sticking to the systems. It was probably a double-edged sword, where they know that their attack's pretty good, but they also know at some point, if they keep attacking Warrington on the line, they will score points. They did that. They scored a couple of late tries and embarrassed them, really, because Warrington were in a fantastic position to get them points. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, if your team's winning by a couple of tries going into the last 5 minutes, you win that game, but not on last weekend.
We'll talk more about Warrington in a second. I'm just going to look at the playoff picture, the top 6, top 7 as it is now, as we do start to seriously think about semi-finals and the end of the season. We'll start at the top 2. Hull KR 4 clear, as we've said. Wigan behind them. Lee a point behind Wigan. Can you see a change in the top 2 between now and... Because we've had this conversation before. The League Leaders' Shield is a trophy, should be taken seriously, more seriously than it is. But there is probably an argument that finishing second is, compared to third, is probably more significant than first compared to second in terms of what it gives you at the end of the year. Yeah,
in terms of placing you in a best place for winning the grand final, the top 2 is where you want to be. But Hull KR consistently have been the best team. They picked up 1 trophy, so I can't see them moving now. I think they picked that League Leaders' Shield up, and rightly so. They've been by far and away the best team. Wigan, I can't see them dropping out a second, and I say that not because they're in good form. They're actually in the worst form they've been in it, probably under Matt Peet, really. But they've got a lot of injuries. I think you put Sam Walters back in, Luke Thompson's not far away. Jay Field's coming back in, and that man Bevan French is back in the squad this week. Them 4 players going into any team, I'd probably back Salford if them 4 players went into their team. So I can only see a bit of an uprising from Wigan come the back end, and that's the danger for Hull KR.
So from a league perspective, in terms of that top 3, you know one of those 2 is going to drop points in the next 2 weeks because they play each other. I think I probably agree with you. From a Wigan perspective, the timing of that cavalry turning up. If you were going to bring those 4 players back that you mentioned 6 weeks at the start of the season, if they find fitness and form at that time, they're going to be very dangerous, aren't they, that back end of the year?
Yeah, and in a real strange way, Matt Peet's probably been happy with the fact that they're nicely in second and they know that all the players are going to be back, because if all the players were playing and they lose them 3-4 weeks out from the end of the season, that's a big problem. Now they've got a month to get the fitness back. I don't think they'll be anywhere near as good as what we've seen them previously, because they're all coming back and looking for fitness. But I do know how good all them players are, and even if they're at 80-90%, then, you know, added to that already very good Wigan side, I expect them to go on. Will they be at OKR? I'm not sure. What a game that'll be. And Lee just need to keep doing what they're doing and knocking off wins, because we saw previously last year where they just kept going win after win after win before the playoffs. And it sets you up for a great playoff series too. I've
said it a few times, I think Lee are probably the last team I'd want to play in a one-off game. Partly because of that, I guess we spoke about Old Trafford being unpredictable, but there's a little bit of that right across the league, a little bit of that chaos right across that side, right? I think if you're playing Hull KR and Wigan, you can almost, you know how difficult they are to stop, but you can almost plot it a little bit more. I think Lee are just in a one-off game would be really, really tricky.
Yeah, and I tell you what would be tricky if they finished in second place and someone had to go to the Leopards den, because the Derek will have it absolutely bouncing. He has done all year, so I think that's as tough as Hull KR to go at the minute. It's the stadium's on top of you. It's a great place to play, but they play a real exciting brand. I think Keenan Brand and Umaila Hanley have really, really improved. So they've got so much attacking threat. You go there when the adrenaline's firing, that will be one of the toughest places to go. And for that reason, I think we're going to be doing everything they can to hold on to that semi-final at home.
Well, you mentioned him in dispatches, but Edwin Apape, a few of his tackles on Friday night nearly cracked the TV screen. He's probably the toughest pound-for-pound player we've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone, probably since Tommy Luluai retired, hit like that. But Edwin Apape does it, but he's almost got a little bit more pace about it when he does it. He's hitting, people regular, and when people are putting good footwork on him, and you'd expect them just to be tackled, they're getting bent backwards and the leg rocks back, but it's great because his technique, you don't have to put a shoulder charge in. If you get your technique, 'cause he's not a big fella either, but he's so strong, and he'd probably be the last person anyone wants to run at in that Leopards team.
In behind that cluster of 3, Leeds and St Helens, they've both undoubtedly got the staying power to make the 6. I don't think that's in any question. I suppose the battle there is who gets into 4th as opposed to 5th, who gets that first round of the playoffs at home. Difficult to say which one of them's got the edge at the moment. I'd probably nudging towards St Helens.
Yeah, just purely, I always think the best sides are the best defensive sides. The second best defence in the competition at the moment is Saints. The amount of clean sheets they're having, over the last sort of month or 6 weeks is pretty phenomenal. So they're building their success on defence. I'm not sure Leeds have got the attack to break them down as much as they'd like. And the more that Saints, Jack Wellesby's going to be coming back soon, I think some of these players are going to start dropping back in. We mentioned headaches for Sean Wayne before. There's going to be a couple of headaches for Paul Wellens, because the people in that spine at the moment are in there on merit. George Whitby can't force his way back in. I think Tristan Saylor's really kicked on. He's changed my opinion from the start of the year, where I thought, I'm not sure really what he's giving this team now. He gives them so much threat with the ball. And Johnny Lomax and Moses Mbai doing a fantastic job in the half. So they have everything to play for, but they're really solid. I think the core group are really solid. And we know how many lads they've got in there who've been there and done it before and know how to win the big games.
I think that probably then leaves us with just the battle for 6th place. Well, an interesting one. Trinity, Wakefield in pole position at the moment. You mentioned earlier that you think they'll be very good back end of the season. They have that kind of weird almost joker to play, and they've not played Salford yet, so you would think there's some wins there straight away. It would be a massive achievement, first year back in Super League, to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think, out of all three sides probably going for it, Warrington, Hull and Wakefield are the team that, from this moment now, I'd expect to win the most games. Just by the way they're playing. When they're playing at home, they often win. They're beating some really big teams. And they just seem to be improving under Darryl as well. They don't seem to be at the finish point, of this evolution for this year. I think they're building and they're getting better. I think it's a very similar side, or a very similar style to when Darryl had Castleford. He's got a lot of good attacking players. I think Mason Leno's really improved as well.
His kind of redemption arc, if you like, of that last season they were in Super League to then kind of almost reinventing himself in the Championship and then re-emerging as a really good Super League player is a really interesting kind of subplot to their season, I think. Absolutely,
and I think what he's done, everyone's been looking at Jake Truman to, be that star, and he's took it on himself. He's been fit more often than not. I think Mike McMeekan's really helped that side as well, just the way he's been carrying the ball, playing massive minutes. So for me, I think Wakefield are definitely favourites, and the fact that Hull FC have got 5 home games, it's probably a bit of an hindrance at the stage now because they're poor at home.
It's crazy, isn't it, that you would look at that and go, well, any other club in that situation, you'd say, oh, look at this run of home games they've got. That puts them in really good position to go and win this. You're looking at the complete reverse of that from a Hull FC perspective. It's really difficult to see how a team makes the playoffs with their home form being the way it has been.
Yeah, and, it starts this week. I think they're playing Salford, aren't they, on Sunday? So you'd imagine, even in third gear with what Salford are going through at the minute, the players who have left already this week, Chris Hankinson, Chris Hill, stalwarts, we're hearing other players maybe following that as well. So Hull should get that voodoo off the back, so to speak, but they've already won once, and I think if someone goes there, that it's not an intimidating place like it used to be. It's almost nice, and the fans are like almost worried, is it going to happen again? So for me, Wakefield is much tougher, but with 5 home games to go, you're right, Lewis, they should be in the driving seat thinking, this is our time now, we've got all this, if we win 5 out of 6 games, we should make the 6.
Warrington done? I don't think they can lose again and be in the picture.
Well, I can't see them beating Wigan on the weekend. No. With the players back for Wigan, the drama that we're hearing from Warrington is Matt Duffy allowed to play? Is he not allowed to play?
Well, he's in the 21 man.
Yeah, he's in the 21 man, and there was strong rumours that he would be stood down for a week. Look, he's a very good player, isn't he? And I think Warrington are better with him in the team, but for whatever reason, the culture at the place just doesn't seem to be right. Zane Musgrove's left. There was rumours that Matt Duffy were involved in that. But for whatever reason, it's just not working there, is it? And defensively, if you skim everything else, defensively, they're just not good enough. They are just not good enough. They're giving their attack too much to do. And even when they look like they've done the job, they just turn style and let people through when they're defending their own line.
So I think you've given us a top 6 of Hull KR, Wigan, Lee, St Helens, Leeds and Wakefield.
Yep.
Who are we watching at Old Trafford in about 2 months' time?
Well, I think we've probably got the best playoff series in front of us that we've had in a long, long time. I don't think anyone out of them 6, and let's have it right, if Warrington get in, they'll be in great form. If Hull get in, they'll be in great form. So whoever's in that top 6 are going to be in fantastic form, and not necessarily at the top 2. The top 2 teams for me are Hull KR and Wigan. I don't think that'll be the grand final this year. I think Hull KR get there, and potentially the Leopards.
2023 Challenge Cup final rematch.
Yeah, and it weren't a bad one, was it?
It was all right, wasn't it?
Drop goal. If we get something like
good.
that, look, I'm not writing Wigan off because I still think they're a sensational side, but it just doesn't seem to be clicking at the moment. And have they got time to turn it round? You'd probably say they have. but I think the Leopards are there to snatch that second position.
Yeah, I think second versus third, obviously, that if we get to that point in a semi-final, Wigan versus Lee, that place will be absolutely bouncing. We had it last year, of course, and Wigan kind of blew them away. I think I side with you. I don't think that happens again.
And it depends which way.
Enough to pick a winner.
It depends which venue it's at too.
Yeah.
But we saw how close the round one fixture.
Yeah.
1-0 and extra time. It was a sensational game.
And there's an obvious geographical rivalry there as well, but you do just get the impression as well, those two groups of players in particular just love getting stuck into each other. There's a real kind of fire to that fixture, isn't there? It's going to be, like you say, I think we could be in for one of the best run-ins ever. And in a season when there's been a lot of talk about what's going on off the field, how good is it to just be looking at this and going, well, anything happens between now and October.
Yeah, and there's a lovely spread, isn't there? There's a few Yorkshire teams, a few Lancashire sides, and I think it's 3-3, isn't it? So it's a great mix, and there is an argument for every team making the grand final. That's the exciting thing. Whether you're Wakefield and the fairy tale, or whether you're Wigan or St Helens, everyone wrote Saints off, didn't they, at the start of the year? And people were saying Paul Wellens won't last the year, and he's just turned it around, and they're not looking behind them now. They're looking in front of them, who they can catch and who they can knock off that perch. Yeah,
Old Trafford looming ever larger on the horizon. Of course, after that grand final, we have got an Ashes series for the first time since 2003, and an England team looking to beat Australia, the first team from these shores to do so since 2006. As we continue our build-up to the Ashes, let's take a look back on that memorable night and the build-up where Leon Price managed to upset a few Australians.
The 2006 Tri-Nations has gone down as one of the great international series, and at the centre of it all was Leon Price and his love of Blackpool Beach. Great Britain arrived in Australia with a squad packed full of household names: Jamie Peacock, Sean Long, Adrian Morley, just to name a few. Ahead of an eagerly anticipated tournament opener, Price uttered the now immortal words, "I'd much rather be back in Bradford. I'd rather be on Blackpool Beach than Bondi." Uproar followed as the beach-proud Australian media and team responded. Aussie centre Terry Hill replied, "I'll fly him back to England myself in economy. I'm not sure Leon would know much about first class. In Bradford during the 1994 tour, they told us not to walk home without a gun." With tensions high, the game that followed was an all-time classic. Willie Mason punched Stuart Fielding in the face within 3 minutes. Jamie Peacock returned fire with a big right hook of his own. Great Britain would go on to win 23 points to 12, the first win in Sydney since 1988, and to this day, the last time a team from Great Britain or England has beaten Australia. See you at Wembley in October.
Yeah, can't wait for this. I don't think we'll see repeat scenes of JP and Willie Mason going toe-to-toe quite like that, but I'm really looking forward to seeing who sticks their head above the parapet in the lead-up and who starts the mind games and when those little jibes start coming in.
Oh, definitely, and there will no doubt be fireworks on the field. We've got, a very, very good pack. We mentioned a couple before, and, so have Australia, so it's... What a time to be a fan. What a time to be working in the game. And, we've got an end of season that's going to be mouth-watering. But then how good is this? To look forward to an Ashes series. I coach kids and they're all booking the tickets. We're getting sell-out grounds. It's what the sport's about. We want to beat Australia. And I genuinely, Lewis, think we've got an opportunity and a real chance.
I say this slightly tongue-in-cheek. As we look back on Leon Price there, those comments about Bondi Beach and the mind games there, we spoke about Mikey Lewis earlier on in the show being in that England team, and there's obviously an ongoing debate about Jake Connor, whether he should be in that team. They might be worth having in just to annoy Australia into making a mistake.
Yeah, well, I think, Australia are very good out there. And if we're relying on verbals to get under the skin, I think we just need to concentrate on getting our best players playing the best. I think with Sean Wayne, we've got one of the best coaches that Britain's ever produced. And I guarantee he'll have them bouncing off the walls and ready to rip into Australia, because when you put that jersey on, it's always special. But when you put it on and play against Australia, that's the pinnacle. Sean Wayne will make them understand what it's all about, and regardless of result, there's going to be some very bruised Australians going back home.
I think Sean could probably get me pumped up to do the weekly shop. He's that kind of guy, isn't he? Let's move on to this weekend's games in the Betfred Super League, because it has thrown up another really, really good schedule. And given the conversation that we've just been having about that top six, Lee versus Leeds, not only two teams that you expected to throw up a really good game, but it's laced with so much significance.
Yeah, and this is a real test for both sides. I think, Leeds are in great form, and when they have had a slight dip, they've bounced straight back. I think, Brad Arthur is almost committed to staying, almost. So I think they go in here as underdogs, and I think that's good for Leeds because that's what they'll face in the playoffs, no doubt. Lee probably the opposite. They are facing an almighty side, but as favourites. So for me, I'm just interested in seeing who comes out on top and who performs the best. I do think Lee at home will be too strong for the Rhinos, but this is going to be a mouth-watering game.
They'll take so much confidence as well, Lee, from that performance at the weekend.
Oh yeah, and what they'll be speaking about is, look, just believe in the process, because if it takes us 70, 75 or 78 minutes, we are good enough, and we've shown that last week. For Leeds, I think they probably just needs to keep doing what they've been doing over the last probably 3 months. They've been sensational, haven't they? And the way Jake Connor's been playing, he's leading the Man of Steel by a handsome number at the minute, I think. And if he can play to his best, I think this Lee Leopards defence could be opened up a number of times.
Yeah, he was certainly out in front when the voting went blind a few weeks ago. We'll move on to absolute mouth-watering games on Friday. Warrington versus Wigan. It's last chance saloon for Warrington. They have to win this game if they've got any hope of making a sixer. And Wigan, equally, there's some pressure on there because they're going to have Lee breathing down their necks. They could well go into this game in third place if Lee do get that win against Leeds the night before. And if they've got any genuine hope of catching Hull KR, they've got to win it as well.
Well, yeah, Wigan have been poor for the last probably 4 or 5 games, and there's no getting around that they won't be happy. Even the last game, I think it was Catalans when they won, they limped home. So they need to go there and perform. There's no excuses now, they've got the players back. And Warrington, it'll feel a little bit like the cup final, won't it, when they've had the pocket pinch, when the performance for 75 minutes was pretty good, but the last 5 minutes was poor. If they can put 80 minutes against Wigan, they've got a chance. But I just think Wigan have got too much in attack. I think they'll open Warrington up a number of times and score over 20 points.
I actually think the other game on Friday night might be tied around because it's Darryl Powell's kind of Wakefield Globetrotters. We're talking about the style of football that they play against this St Helens defensive machine that you've mentioned. I think this is a really interesting game in rugby league. Yeah,
this is going to be massive, and this will be massive in terms of who finishes 6th. I think if Wakefield knock this one off, we can genuinely start going, look, I think they beat Wigan, they beat Hull KR. If they can beat Saints as well, then they're in for a really good end of year. I'm not sure how this one goes. I think Saints' defence has been fantastic, and if they can just increase their attack by a bit, they beat Wakefield, but I'm not sure they do.
On to Saturday, Hull KR scoring plenty of points. Obviously, last time out, they go to another team that's leaking points at the moment in Cass. Very difficult to make a case for anything other than another Hull KR win, let's be honest.
Yeah, at Hull KR, that's the hardest place to go in the competition by a stretch. And the way Castleford fared on the travels last weekend at Saints, 40-0, they're a side in transition, aren't they, under Chris Chester. I can't see anything but a big Hull KR win.
Some noises that they are getting closer to appointing a permanent head coach at Cass. We'll wait and see who that is. Probably a game that isn't going to get too much attention, a dead rubber at this stage, Huddersfield Catalans, but it will mean a lot in terms of the development over the next 5 or 6 weeks, looking into next season for both of these teams to put a little bit of a run together. Yeah,
and both young coaches. I played with both coaches, and they're really proud men. And Joel at the start of his journey, and Luke Robinson, at the end of a first year that's been really tough, but I think he's come through that now. I think they are performing much better. There has been some success stories there, like young George Flanagan. I think he's been sensational. So yeah, there's nothing in terms of other than pride, but let me tell you, the last time Huddersfield went out, I think they beat Hull FC. Were on Ken Davies' birthday, and they were singing, and you know how much pride they had in that jersey then. They'll need that again, because Catalans, you know, they've still got some very, very good players in that side.
Rounding the weekend off on Sunday, if Hull FC's home record doesn't improve against Salford, then they're going to have to just bulldoze the place, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm just hoping, Lewis, that this game gets put on. The amount of players exiting the Red Devils, the stuff we're hearing in terms of finances, it's quite sad, and I think they're closer than ever now to shutting the doors, unfortunately. The money from the investment still hasn't come in, I believe, and yeah, Hull FC at home against a wounded Salford now. It's even worse than, you know, they've lost Chris Hill, they've lost Chris Hankinson, so if Hull FC don't win this one, there'll be some real raised eyebrows, I'm sure.
England's women also in action this weekend. They play Wales as both teams continue their build-up to next year's World Cup. That game's on BBC iPlayer and S4C, the Welsh language channel as well. So you can watch that across the weekend too. Be interested to see some of those young bright stars of the Betfred Women's Super League come through. Looks like Grace Banks from Wigan, who's been outstanding all season, is set to make her England debut. So definitely one to keep an eye on across the weekend. Kev, slightly strange having just 3 games around for the last couple of weeks, but it almost feels like we had a little bit of a breather. Everyone's kind of back in the starting blocks for this last chunk before we get to the knockouts.
Yeah, and that's what it is. We've got a 6-week block now, but there's still a lot to play for, and there's some cracking games this weekend, so it didn't feel like Super League over the last few weeks, only watching 3 games. I like 6, so yeah, I'll be watching them all.
Final point, we touched on it at the end of last week's show. Mickey Higham, obviously, going through it at the moment, but lovely tribute to him. That Warrington League game, the full stadium applauding him. He was there, he looked genuinely touched, surrounded by his friends and family and our own Adrian Morley. Just a really nice moment.
It was a fantastic moment, and it's not a surprising moment when we see how the game comes together for one of its own, and Mickey Higham is genuinely one of the own. He's tough, he's been to a couple of clubs, he's represented his country. Everything he's done with class, and yeah, I thought what Lee did and what Warrington did was absolutely top class, and a real touching moment. And we're all still with Mickey in his fight against cancer, and hoping he can come out like he did last time. You know, and he is a warrior, and I'm sure he'll fight this one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Kev, thanks for your time. We're just starting to get that little bit of a buzz again, aren't we? The end of the season getting ever closer, and all of a sudden, every one of these Betfred Super League games feels far, far more significant. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more from The Last Tackle.
This is my time.